Good evening and welcome to the CUNY Academy for this installment of AP US History, where we're not just learning history, we're making history. All right, we're going to talk to you today about the Mexican War, and you should have been in class today, got some primary source readings on that you'll be debating in class on Wednesday. So we're going to give you an overview of just the causes of the war. The war itself is not that big of an issue as far as the fighting of it, it's more the causes that are pretty critical. All right, now, um, we already learned about manifest destiny, which basically comes from a quote from a guy named John L. O'Sullivan, okay, who writes this in a newspaper, saying that it is our manifest destiny, that we're destined by God to possess the entire continent. Providence is another word for God. You notice the capital letter there, okay? To overspread the continent with democracy and liberty, okay, and help these people out in the Mexican and Native American territories and things like that. So this is kind of the belief that the country is endorsing and believing that we need to expand, we need to move westward, we need to fulfill basically God's plan for us. Okay, this is a pretty famous painting called Looking Outward. I don't necessarily like it to teach manifest destiny. Some people kind of say with the angel here, it kind of implies that there's that God in hand. But this painting isn't done until 1872, and it's more after the Civil War, where you see the trains moving west, okay, the railroads, the stagecoach. You see the Indians on the run this way, okay, the oxen coming with the farmers, the buffalo are in retreat, okay, all the commerce coming from the river back over here. But it's more something we talk about after the Mexican War, not before. But regardless about the painting, manifest destiny is kind of the mood of the country at the time. Now, Texas. That's not the Texas you and I know and love, but that was the shape of Texas at the time. Texas is a territory in Mexico, and basically the Mexican government wants Texas to become a cotton farmland, all right? They want it to grow and kind of export cotton on the world stage. So who better to recruit than American farmers to come down and be cotton farmers in this Mexican territory? So Mexico creates these people called empresarios, which are land agents that are going to recruit American farmers from Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri to come down into Texas, take land, and farm it, basically to help the Mexican government do well. Okay? Now, why is Texas so important from America's standpoint? Because it is kind of the key to the West, and you have a variety of people that want to move westward, okay? Kind of to borrow a phrase from Eric Foner, all looking for freedom, okay? You have your pioneers that want to settle in Louisiana Territory and eventually end up in Oregon. I think you've all been to Oregon before on the Oregon Trail. And they basically want to get to where there are no government influences, no banks, no interest rates, no outside factors affecting your lives. Just be free to live the way you want to live, the way Thomas Jefferson kind of implied. Okay? You have your yeoman farmers that would love to come west, because yeoman farmers are small farmers that have no slaves, so they would love to get more land and make their farms bigger and start making money. Okay? The plantation owners want to move west because they will stay where they're at, but if slavery expands, the demand for their slaves will increase, so they will make more money possibly, and more slave states that can join the Senate to be pro-slavery and protect their investment, if you will. Okay? The capitalists were embracing manifest destiny because they wanted a place to sell their goods. They needed a market out there. They needed the raw materials to come back to their factories so they can then sell them all over the country. And then new immigrants arriving from Ireland and other places want to come here and set up shop as farmland and kind of take control of their own lives. So you basically have a whole bunch of people eager to move westward for various reasons and pursue their liberty and freedom. In the way in Texas is a guy named Santa Anna, right? Not Santa Claus, but Santa Anna, okay? This guy was 4 times the leader of Mexico, okay? Now, on the surface, you might say, well, he's pretty popular. People keep electing the guy. But realistically, if you're voted 4 different times to be the leader, that means 3 different times people didn't want you, okay? It shows the instability of the Mexican government that they cannot keep a leader in place for a long period of time, okay? And Santa Anna basically believes 2 things should rule Mexico. Number 1, the army. You can kind of tell by his outfit there that he is a military leader, and the church. All right. So basically, you have to be Catholic to live in Mexico, and the army kind of calls the shots and rules things. All right. Now, he does not like the fact that so many Americans are coming into Mexico, okay, and trying to essentially set up their culture, bring their slaves, bring Protestantism, and start to weaken the Mexican culture a little bit. So they actually closed the borders for a period and allow no more American immigration, no more empresarial land agents moving down into Texas. But the Americans are loving this opportunity because Texas is full of cotton land, full of good real estate, so they are crossing the border illegally through the 1830s to start to overpopulate Texas. Might sound familiar. So the Texans eventually do not like Santa Anna's harsh policies, so they lead a revolt for independence. All right, so there is a Texas independence movement that is going to start in 1836, and there are basically two battles that are going to fight the whole thing. Okay, the Texas Army has about 200 soldiers that are going to be pinned up in this little fort here called the Alamo. Okay, and the rest of the army is kind of out in the countryside rounding up people recruiting so they can be able to launch this offensive against Santa Anna. And 3,000 Mexicans surround the fort, storm the Alamo, wipe out all 200 of them. They are ceasing to exist after that attack. And that is why the famous battle cry, "Remember the Alamo," which you might see on my tie on Wednesday. No, I got to dress for college on Wednesday, so I can't wear my Alamo tie, but I'll save it for later. Why "Remember the Alamo" becomes the famous battle cry. All right. After that, the Texans, led by Sam Houston, are determined to avenge the loss at the Alamo, and they attack Santa Anna, surround him, and basically get his army to surrender, recognizing Texas's independence. Okay, and Texas will become the Lone Star Republic. All right, Texas essentially getting its own independence and its own freedom, wanting to be part of the United States, but that's going to create a little bit of a problem. All right. Now this video is going to be a little bit longer just because you're debating this on Tuesday. I want to make sure you get the gist of what's going on. Okay, so they create the Lone Star Republic. Sam Houston is elected president. All right, he wants to be annexed by the United States as a slave state. Texas has slaves. There were cotton farmers that went down there. It only makes sense. All right, but the Whigs, remember that's our party against Andrew Jackson. All right, decides they do not want to annex because they're worried that there'd be a war with Mexico that would not be in their best interest, because a lot of Whigs are northern businessmen and industrialists. They don't see the benefit of acquiring more cotton territory. And abolitionists are going to be opposed to this annexation because it's another slave state, which allows slavery to expand even further into new territory. Remember, our last slavery question dealt with the Louisiana Territory, of which the South only got Arkansas and the Indian Territory and Oklahoma. Now this is going to open up a whole new area of the South that slavery can expand to. Abolitionists are worried about that. All right, so 8 years passed from the time Texas requests annexation, and something is finally done about it. 1844, we see Henry Clay running as a Whig, all right, running for president, taking on James K. Polk, the Democrat, all right. Polk is what we're going to call a dark horse candidate, somebody that comes out of the woodwork that nobody knows about and kind of miraculously pulls off the upset to get the nomination. And basically there's some shenanigans and some dealings that the Democrats do at their convention to get Polk to be the leader, or to be their nominee for the party. Okay, Polk being from Tennessee. Clay, as we should already know, is the Kentuckian, known as the Great Compromiser. All right. So Clay is going to run against Polk for the nomination to try and kind of unify the country in the wake of some of this Texas mess, and follow 4 years of John Tyler, who was a very controversial president. In fact, he was called the president without a party. All right, so in the election in 1844, Van Buren was the favorite. He was the candidate in 1840 that lost to William Henry Harrison in the log cabin hard cider campaign, and the Democrats went back to him, figuring he could unite the party again and kind of bring back the Jacksonites. Okay, but the party changed the rules to say that you needed 2/3 of the states to win the nomination. Anytime you see 2/3 of the states for something, that's pro-South, because the South is not half of the Democratic Party. So if it was half, the Northerners could easily block what the South is trying to do, but the South put the 2/3 in rule to basically say you have to have the South plus some of the North in order to get the nomination. So it kind of was done to screw Van Buren over, pardon the expression, and give Polk the nomination. And they call Polk the Young Hickory, because Old Hickory, as we know, was Andrew Jackson. So Polk is kind of carrying on that Andrew Jackson common man Democratic legacy. All right. On the Whig side, Henry Clay easily wins the nomination. He's opposed to annexing Texas. Then he realizes this is a divisive issue. A lot of the country wants to do it. So he says, I support annexation if it won't cause a rift in the country or cause any sectional tensions. Then he changed his mind again and said, no, I'm against annexation. In today's world, we would call him a flip-flopper because he cannot keep a consistent position on the issue. All right, remember, Henry Clay is about compromising. He's just looking for the best way to appease everybody. And his vice presidential candidate in the election 1844 was a big leader in the temperance movement. So anybody that was pro-alcohol was not voting for Henry Clay. So you can imagine why James K. Polk wins. All right, Polk basically makes 6 campaign promises, okay, to if you elect them. All right, you can kind of see how the breakdown of the vote goes. Okay, Polk has most of his support in the South and the North, and obviously all of the West. Clay kind of gets those states in the middle. You can see they benefited from the American system, for example, with all the transportation. Might be a reason they like him. You got some pro-trading states over here that like the Whig policy of economic expansion and so on. Polk says, if I win, we will annex Texas. We will conquer the Southwest Territory, all right, which is Arizona, New Mexico, California. He says 54-40 or fight. 54-40 was the proposed boundary between Oregon Territory and Canada. All right. He didn't quite fulfill that promise, but we did get the Oregon Territory from England. He says, I'll do this all in one term. That way I don't have to worry about campaigning for a second. He says, we'll lower the tariffs and we'll create a sub-treasury system, which is kind of like a version of the national bank that he would do as well. Okay, so very simple, nice and easy, 6 promises, actually kept them all. All right. Now, as president, he has to figure out a way to get Texas, and this is what we're going to be debating. He sends a guy named John Slidell as an ambassador to Mexico. Okay, and John Slidell's job is to offer to buy Texas for $20 million. All right, we want to buy Texas from you and the Southwest Territory. All right, and this will resolve our dispute between the U.S. and Mexico. The Mexican government refuses to meet him. Okay, they kick him out and say, we don't want to even talk to you because we don't like what you're up to. This might sound a little bit like the, yes, you said it, XYZ affair. We send a diplomat, he refuses to get recognized. Okay, so General Zachary Taylor, he's not president yet, but he is the leader of a military force, goes down to the border to check on things between Mexico and the United States. And while he gets down to that border, all right, he's down in this area here, okay, he is ambushed by Mexican forces, and 16 Americans die in the attack by the Mexicans, all right? Now, since we couldn't agree on the border, okay, the Americans thought the border was right along here, and you geography students should know that that is the Rio Grande River, all right? And Texas thought it was the Nueces River right in here. And I'll just put an N for Nueces, okay? So where Taylor goes, he is in what Mexico perceives to be Mexico, but what America thinks is America, all right? So it creates a huge debate over where the first shots were fired to start this conflict, okay? President Polk goes to Congress for the second time in American history and asks for a declaration of war. It passes the House 174-14 and passes the Senate 40-2. We are going to go to war with Mexico to avenge the attack on our soldiers on our own soil. Okay? Now, that's basically how the war begins, and that's really all you need to know for right now. Okay? Our debate is going to pick up on whether or not this was a justified war and whether or not President Polk provoked this or whether or not the Mexicans provoked this and basically caused the rift. All right, so thank you for listening to the Kuhn Academy, where we're not just learning history, we're making history. We'll see you on Wednesday. Looking forward to a great debate. Thank you.